TEDxScotlandville.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got finest up in here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen.
So, I'm from Trenton, New Jersey. Trenton is the capital of New Jersey. And Trenton, in description, is a 7.5 square mile box of deliberately concentrated poverty. A proverbial under-resourced community, a 500 credit score community, right? But the most striking thing about Trenton is that it's not an anomaly. Predominantly black communities across the United States are considered under-resourced communities. I don't readily agree with the term under-resourced. I like to refer to our communities as over-extracted communities. We don't live in under-resourced communities. We live in over-extracted communities because our communities are full of resources. We have a plethora of resources. We possess in our communities resources in which entire industries have been built upon. Economic powerhouses have been built upon the resources in our communities. For example, Rap Snacks. Rap Snacks is a part of the hip-hop community. I come from a rap group out of Trenton, New Jersey. That's hip-hop. Hip-hop is music. Music is a cultural resource. Music, globally, the global music market is a $142 billion industry. And the music is driven primarily by what is considered American music. But we all know that there's no such thing as American music without black music. All music that comes from America is primarily black music, all of it, whether it's rock, country, rhythm and blues, soul, funk, hip hop, it's all has its origins in the black community. Matter of fact, right up the road, when you're crossing the border going into Mississippi, the sign reads, "Welcome to Mississippi, home of American music." Why did American music start in Mississippi? Because Mississippi had some of the most acute oppression in the country. So blues musicians cropped up in that area because of the acute oppression that they were suffering on a daily basis. Musicians like Willie Dixon, one of the greatest blues musicians ever, at 13 years old was locked up on Parchment's prison plantation in Mississippi. He escaped. He was going to be there for the rest of his life because there was no release clause. So he escaped on a mule, went to Chicago, and from Chicago, the blues spread from there to New York, and that's how black music started to spread around the country, and this is how it spread everywhere from there. But black music started every form of music in America, and now it's a $142 billion global industry. In 1 year alone, music pumped $10 billion into the American economy. Is that not a resource? Oh, are we under-resourced when we possess one of the greatest resources for economic progress in the world? $142 billion industry. Started in these same low to moderate income, under-resourced, so-called under-resourced communities. Our communities are heavily resourced. We're not an under-resourced community. We're an over-extracted community. It's like the African proverb, everything the village needs is already in the village. Everything we have is already amongst us. We've just been blocked out of the lanes to exploit our own intellectual property, our own cultural resources, our own athletic resources. Look at sports. The American sports industry is built on an athletic resource that comes from our communities. Think about it, for example. 2 leagues, the NFL, the NBA. The NFL netted $15 billion in a single year. $15 billion. The NBA, $8 billion in a single year. That's a collective $23 billion between 2 professional sports leagues. You have 1,600 players in the NFL. You have about 520 players in the NBA for a total of about 2,200 players. 1,600 of those players are black. So here's a $23 billion industry built on the athletic resource that comes from these so-called under-resourced communities. Think about it, 2 professional leagues, 62 teams, 2,200 players, 1,600 of them black, 1 black owner between the 2 leagues, $23 billion industry. The music industry is a $142 billion industry, and black communities or black artists And enterprises only see 1% of the business receipts from that industry. So our communities are not under-resourced communities. They're grossly over-extracted. Politically, public policy has been passed to put us in a position where we can't reach the lanes to exploit our own resources. We can't exploit the resources because we're locked out of access to the lanes to exploit our own resources. That's what's been the problem. For example, Rap Snacks. Rap Snacks Foundation, we develop entrepreneurship, community economic development programs for these same communities. Right up the road again, Mississippi, one of our distributors. It's a Black-owned distributor. They distribute to about 1,000 retail mom-and-pop stores throughout that state. And of the 1,000 stores that they're delivering to or servicing in Mississippi in Black communities, only 3 are Black-owned out of 1,000. Further, you go into any one of those stores, any corner store in your hood, social study, pick any product out of the 200 to 300 products in the corner store. How many of them are produced by people that look like you? How many are produced, manufactured, or distributed by people that live in that community or look like the people that live in that community? We used to call them mom and pop stores, but the people that own the stores don't look like my mom and pop anymore, right? So what happens is the resource of buying power is extracted out the community at the point of purchase. You know, we hear a lot of, whether it's real or imagined, $1.2 trillion in collective buying power that leaves the community at the point of purchase because every time we buy something, it's leaving the community because we don't produce the products that we consume. So in these stores, when you purchase these products, with exceptions to Rap Snacks, how many other products are Black-owned? How many of the other products are actually engaging the community and helping build the community? So that buying power, it doesn't circulate in the community long enough to establish the institutions that are necessary to sustain the group. It leaves. So again, our communities are not under-resourced communities. It's like, it reminds me of Africa, you know, and how they promote Africa as an impoverished continent. What we see about Africa is poverty constantly. It's all about Africa's poverty and sickness and death and disease. That's what we see. But Africa is the most resourceful continent on earth. The most resourceful. There's no superpower in the world. You can't be a superpower without Africa's resources. It's impossible. But at the same time that they're projecting the image of Africa as an under-resourced continent, they're extracting the resources out of Africa. Africa's not an under-resourced continent. It's an over-extracted continent, just like Black communities in the United States. So what we do is we develop programming, community economic development programming for students and residents of our communities to trap some of those resources, to give us a greater share in the exploitation of our own resources. So basically, our effort is to control the internal markets in our own communities in a way that the resources, when monetized, come back to support and sustain the group collectively. Because that's what's pretty much been draining the communities. It's not that we're under-resourced. We don't have to ask other groups for anything, really. If we control just 14%, we're about 14% of the United States population. If we control just 14% of any of the industries that are built on the resources that come from our communities, we'd be good. We'd be good. So we're in this paradigm. We're in this paradigm of believing the hype about our communities. Take Lonnie Johnson, for example. Just imagine the genius of the scientist Lonnie Johnson being used to build infrastructure in the Black community as opposed to building weapons programs for NASA. He made the Super Soaker, though. You know, we all like the Super Soaker. I like the Super Soaker, but I'm just trying to imagine the potential. Let's reimagine the potential of those engineers coming back to the community to build infrastructure in our under-resourced communities. But the academic genius takes the same route as the athleticism, as the music, the cultural art, the fashion, everything. Like, for example, hip-hop music. Hip-hop music, when it launched, they said it wasn't art. They said that's not art. That's vandalism. Graffiti was vandalism. When you're vandalizing the space. Now you have people working 3 jobs to buy their wife a Balenciaga bag with graffiti on it. Think about it. You know, so it's art. It's art. Miami. We work out of Miami, Florida. Our office is in Miami, and there's a town in Miami called Wynwood. Wynwood is the art district. Wynwood was originally a Black and Puerto Rican community. But today, Wynwood is a bustling art district that you can't even afford to live in. The very artists that created the Wynwood ambiance can't afford to live there anymore. So Black and Puerto Rican graffiti artists would graffiti on the abandoned buildings. They would beautify the buildings. An art collector comes into Wynwood, see a bunch of kids graffitiing on the wall. He's looking for an abandoned building that he can buy and store art in. He see these kids, he approached them, he said, hey, you can graffiti the whole building that I just got. I'll pay you. Graffiti when they tagged the building up. He started doing art shows in the building. Next thing you know, the store next door opened up a restaurant, and it just started to bubble. Now tourists want to come and look at the art, and before you know it, gentrification in full bloom. They're pushing the original residents out of the community, and now Wynwood is a bustling community that was built on a cultural resource in our community that was called vandalism. So it's a matter of us embracing ourselves and understanding that everything the village needs is already in the village. We just have to develop these resources. We have to develop the infrastructure to sustain the academic genius that comes from our communities, the cultural resources that come from our community. You know, I remember my mom saying, yo, you're scratching up my records. You're destroying my records. You know, because we would scratch the records. We would take her album, her Capona set, her stereo, and scratch the records. She's like, hey, you're going to destroy my records. But what happened? People foreign to the community saw what we were doing. They said, yo, this is innovative. I'm going to create a turntable to serve that purpose. I'm going to create an order-fine needle to serve that purpose, a needle that won't jump when they're spinning the records back. I'm going to create a mixer that let them fade the records and blend the records side to side. They created an entire economy around the innovation of Black youth in these so-called under-resourced communities. Just think of all the ancillary businesses that were created from hip-hop alone. Everything from speaker companies, drum machine companies, clothing companies. Hip-hop has given so many people jobs and businesses and made so many million and billionaires. It's ridiculous. Now you have companies flirting with hip-hop. They want to have Chester Cheetah rapping. Chester Cheetah is on the Lay's potato chip commercials rhyming with Cardi B, what have you. You know, but they're just flirting with the culture. They're exploiting the culture. They're not embracing the culture. Because when you embrace something, you ensure its further development. You ensure its continuity. They're not trying to ensure the continuity of it. They're trying to suck the life out of it. It's our responsibility to put the guards at the gate. It's our responsibility to protect the resources that come from our community so that they can be used to develop our communities and sustain the group. Otherwise, our resources will keep getting extracted, just like African bodies were extracted from the continent, just like diamonds and gold and tungsten and lithium are extracted from the continent on a daily basis. And then they project these images that we're the poorest, we're the most savage, we're the most underdeveloped people in the world, the most resourceless people in the world, which is all false. We are very resourceful people. Everything the village needs is already in the village. Thank you.